Welcome back, Stillmaniacs. Today we are taking a look at Stillmania. But before we start, be sure to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss an update. It was the mid-90s and Warhammer was taking over the world, one country at a time. The venerable development team was directed to conduct influence operations in Italy. Those lucky ducks. Nigel Stillman and co. were to infiltrate the Lucca Games and Comics Fair, a world-famous wargaming convention that would be unveiling Warhammer and its many new releases to an eager Italian audience. What unfolds is a raunchy tale of magnificent banquets, beautiful damsels and dangerous go-betweens. This is that tale. The ultimate and most splendissimo Warhammer has now manifested itself in an Italian version, translated from the Rickish by our Tilean contingent, Visio Orazi, Lucca Miselli, Luca Burnaby and Alessio Cavatore. To mark this momentous event in the history of civilization, a determined band of missionaries was sent forth to unleash Warhammer Italia upon the eager and deserving Italian players at the famous Lucca Games and Comics Fair in Tuscany. Apart from myself, the team included the Machiavellian Jervis Johnson, the cultured John Paul Briscotti, Michelangelo McVeigh, and the talented Michael and Alan Perry, Giorgio Bassani and Andrea Oliverio. Both natives of the province were assigned as cultural advisors to ensure the uncouth Britons did not embarrass themselves by asking for a pie and chips in the land where only a very ignorant barbarian can eat badly. As soon as we landed in Milan, we found ourselves in the care of the Blues Brothers. The Blues Brothers are a chain of shops in Italy which specialise in games and war games figures and, of course, Games Workshop products. Luca Volpino and Lorenzo, our magnificent driver, conveyed us pronto along the Italian motorways, across the plains and into the wooded Tuscan hills. Past the Great Dome of Florence and around the old walls of Lucca until the pavilions of Lucca Games came into view. For the remainder of our stay, we enjoyed the splendid hospitality of Stefano Salvaderi and the disciplined legions of the Blues Brothers. Needless to say, we were destined to return from our Italian experience as civilized Renaissance men. The Octopus and I. After resting in the hotel, which was like Nero's palace, and discovering the delights of the countless channels of Italian television, of which Nero would have approved, we were whisked off to the winding streets of medieval Florence to experience some Florentine home cooking. This was the first of several gastronomic extravaganzas. My companions foolishly overlooked the octopus, so I gratified my appetite with delicious tentacles. I am convinced that it makes you more intelligent and quicker-witted. These are qualities which I would certainly need in abundance to deal with all the challenging and profound questions raised by the sophisticated Italian gamers. It was here, amid the noisy, excited conversation and the Chianti-induced haze, that Stefano and the Blues Brothers staff challenged the Warhammer team to a mega battle of Warhammer on Friday afternoon. The armies were allocated by random chance. They would have the Bretonians, we the Lizardmen. It was rumoured that there were enough troops for over 8,000 points on each side. This meant that I would have to remember the rules for both armies, since we did not yet have the books to refer to, and my memory is notoriously bad. I foresaw lizardmen and Bretonnian special rules merging together in new and Chianti-induced ways. Skinks fight in lance formation, right? Alas, all the brain-enhancing tentacles were gone. Lucca Games and Comics Fair. Lucca Games and Comics Fair, which lasts for 4 days, is renowned throughout Italy and regarded by the city as a major tourist attraction in its own right, quite apart from the intact medieval city itself and its impressive circuit of ramparts. During the Middle Ages and the Renaissance period, Lucca was a strong and fiercely independent city-state. The fair was held in tents in the fields beside the ramparts. These were no ordinary tents. There were several steel-framed, enormous tents, each big enough to fill the floor space in the Birmingham indoor arena. From the outside, it looked like a medieval tournament field. One tent was devoted entirely to games, the others being devoted to comics, which are very popular in Italy. Not only do the Italians have a natural appreciation of art, but they have countless budding artists of outstanding talent whose work can often be found in these comics. Likewise, the Games Pavilion was abundant with fine examples of the modelers and figure painters' art, with rather a lot of this concentrated in the Warhammer section, which occupied at least a third of the pavilion. This area was the territory of the Blues Brothers, who had great heaps of Italian Warhammer and ranks of miniatures in readiness for 4 days of insatiable demand. In display cases were perfect replicas of my Lizardmen Temple and Mike McVeigh's dungeon diorama, made by the talented Alfredo, working only from the photos in White Dwarf. Alfredo also had on display a quite astonishing Norscan temple, complete with reindeer sleigh and gigantic carved wooden idol. There were several big gaming tables set up for Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 participation games. These were manned by the stalwart Blues Brothers staff and covered with terrain and hordes of Bretonnian and Lizardmen figures. The legions of Blues Brothers shop staff, drawn from the towns and cities of Italy, had been augmented by volunteers from among their loyal and devoted customers. More terrain shocks were in store when Romans, led by the Hobby Troll store, brought in a truly impressive wood elf stronghold in a gigantic tree. This tree, which was made from a large perished bonsai, must have been at least 24 inches high and almost as much across. They do things on a grand scale in Italy, and, rather like the Tower of Pisa and the Dome of Florence, it's amazing how they stand up. There was much interest in the new Warhammer magic and also the Bretonnian and Lizardmen armies. As far as I could tell, Mike and the Perry twins were equally overwhelmed by the waves of enthusiastic Italians. We were all much impressed and heartened by the real passion that the Italian gamers have for the hobby, and enjoyed the warm, friendly atmosphere pervading the Lucca show, and pretty much everywhere else we went for that matter. With the big battle looming the next day, I decided to make a cunning battle plan before the effects of the octopus wore off. Considering that the Lizardmen are rather obstinate infantry, like a Roman legion, while the Bretonnians are reckless death or glory boys, I opted for the same plan used by Hannibal at the Battle of Cannae. A weak centre of skinks would tempt the knights into a trap, to be crushed by the solid Saurus cohorts standing firm on the flanks. Jervis the Wise, overall commander, approved the plan with a few modifications. Then we went for another 5-course feast in Lucca. Stillmania Goes to War. Next day we staged the big battle. Jervis took up position in the centre, opposite none other than Massimo Terreni, the Italian national champion. With Stefano commanding the centre of the Bretonnian line, everything went according to plan, and the Bretonnians charged in the centre, sweeping away the skinks. The Stegodons and Sauruses charged the flanks, and there followed one hell of a melee in the middle. Meanwhile, our flanks were hard pressed to hold their own. It was on my flank that I discovered that there are no flat-topped hills in Italy, which meant that rather a lot of Bretonnian arrows fell on my skinks, wiping them out. Meanwhile, the Bretonnian general fell in battle, and victory went to us. Not that there was much of our army left by then. It was a mighty, noisy and exciting battle, and great fun, especially since there were countless players on each side. There were Italians on both sides, and the commanders were not allowed to confer, but no one could understand each other anyway. We celebrated in customary fashion in Lucca, and the wine flowed once more. The City-State of Florence. Saturday was rumoured to be a quiet day at the fair, though it looked quite lively to me. So we made an excursion to Florence, centre of the Italian Renaissance. First stop was Stefano's shop, which has a rather comfy games lounge down below, full of cool and smart-looking young men and women engrossed in a variety of games. Then onto the 2 square miles of medieval Florence. Having not been to Italy before, I was stunned by the splendour of the medieval city and awed by the sheer vertical height of the medieval palaces towering on each side of the narrow streets. What inspiration! The same thought went through my mind and Mike McVeigh's. Wouldn't it be great to make a model of the Ponte Vecchio as a single mighty terrain piece, a bridge covered with medieval buildings? Then we feasted Medici style on gigantic Florentine steaks. Sunday was supposed to be the busiest day, and it was. The Lucca Fair is held during a bank holiday in Italy, and so lots of people come to see it from all over the country. There were not only thousands of enthusiasts for the comics and games, but also plenty of local citizens enjoying a day out at the city's best-known event. Again, it was a busy day for questions. Indeed, amongst the most striking impressions of the Lucca shows, which stuck in our minds, was the overflowing passion and enthusiasm that the Italians have for the hobby, and the abundance of artistic talent. It seems that in Italy, being cultured and artistic is cool, and pursuing an artistic and intelligent hobby is also cool. Here, playing games can be a glamorous and sophisticated pastime, like eating. Remember, this is the heartland of civilization. The dark Machiavellian intrigues of Tilean politics being what they are, we suddenly found ourselves under guard by the Lucca city militia. We felt honoured, but wondered if some rival city-state was planning to capture us, or the stash of Warhammer Italia. Fortunately, the halberds of the Lucchesi must have scared them off. Gimme the Prize. Then came the prize giving. Many of the fine paint jobs we had seen won prizes. Warhammer also won an impressive silver cup for the best game translated into Italian, and we were all awarded inscribed bronze plaques. And so the Lucca Games show began to draw to a close after 4 great days, and just when we were feeling nicely settled in. The Blues Brothers staff were in high spirits and raised Stefano up on a makeshift palanquin like a slan-mage lord. At least 20 lads bore Stefano aloft, parading around the pavilion, chanting "Oi, oi, oi!" and "Palancio, Palancio!" It was awesome to behold, and rather like witnessing a cross between an orc wah and the proclamation of a Roman emperor by the loyal Praetorian Guard. Tilean Attack. Then the Italians began massing at one end of the pavilion, making plans and looking our way. There were many of them. Quickly I began pulling up a hasty barricade of boxes and was soon joined by the Perry twins, veterans of many a skirmish. Then suddenly they surged towards us. The barricade was rapidly stormed and we were lifted up and carried shoulder high around the pavilion at terrifying speed. Receiving the acclamation of the legions is quite an experience. More fun was to follow in a homely restaurant in Livorno, where we were due to encounter the death by pizza experience. The pizzas were not only the real thing, but also truly enormous and very delicious. You need a potion of strength to tackle these, and fortunately it is supplied in a green bottle. Apparently in Italy the large and small Warhammer templates are known as the big and little pizza. Well, the one I was eating was large enough to cover an entire army. While I was still engaged in hand-to-mouth combat with the pizza monster, which, like a disc of zinch, was fighting back and refusing to admit defeat, Jervis organised the Bretonian jousting game, which he and I had devised earlier that day. This proved very exciting and entertaining. Eventually, the contest was down to 2 knights, Stefano and Massimo, the champion. And Stefano managed to unhorse Massimo to win the tournament. We celebrated with more vino. All that remained was for Lucca and Lorenzo to ferry us back to Milan airport on Monday, taking us via Pisa and Virago to show us the famous Leaning Tower and the sea. Well, it was a truly momentous time which filled us all with a big helping of Italian inspiration and passion, as well as some of the best food and drink on earth. It was really great fun discussing all aspects of the hobby with the lively and creative Italians, and I came back inspired with new insight and new ideas. Indeed, the effects on this poor savage have been profound. I have not drunk any tea since I returned, but my intake of wine has increased. I am desperately hunting for octopus in the supermarkets and randomly saying prego to passers-by in the street. That, my friends, is the end of the tale, tall as it may seem. Clearly the dev team had an immense time at the Lucca fair, something I will endeavour to attend one day myself. But in the meantime, join me next time for some more wargaming content. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.